It was a Monday afternoon that defied every expectation of safety in suburban Brisbane. The date was September 12, 2022, and the sun was high over Mansfield, a quiet locality usually defined by its shopping centres and family homes. But at the intersection of Creek and Pine Mountain roads, a dark reality was about to shatter the midday calm. This was not a clandestine meeting in a back alley under the cover of night. It was a brazen, high-visibility operation carried out while residents went about their daily routines. Within minutes, a busy car park would be transformed into a major crime scene, marking the beginning of one of the most intense police investigations Queensland has witnessed in decades. The target of this calculated pursuit was 23-year-old Levi Johnson. Just before 1:00 p.m., Levi was navigating his white Mercedes along Pine Mountain Road, likely unaware that his final moments were being dictated by a surveillance team trailing in his wake. Investigators would later reveal that he had been tracked from a nearby shopping center, his every turn mirrored by two other vehicles, a white Nissan Patrol and a black Audi A3. The occupants of these cars were patient, waiting for the precise moment to strike. That moment arrived when Levi pulled into the car park of the Good Life Health Club, Wishbate. It was a public space filled with gym-goers, but it offered him no sanctuary. As Levi attempted to maneuver his vehicle, the trap snapped shut. The white Nissan Patrol rammed his Mercedes, effectively pinning him in. In a scene that witnesses described as chaotic and terrifying, 4 men emerged from the shadowing vehicles. They were not masked, nor did they show any hesitation. One wielded a crowbar, smashing through the driver's side window in a ferocious attempt to reach Levi. Desperate to escape, the young man scrambled out the passenger door, sprinting across the road in a frantic bid for survival. However, the pursuit was relentless. 2 of the men chased him down at the intersection, where the confrontation reached its tragic conclusion. Levi was struck multiple times with a sharp object, collapsing on the bitumen as the assailants fled. Despite the rapid arrival of emergency services and their best efforts to render aid, Levi succumbed to his injuries at the scene. Who was Levi Johnson? To the detectives arriving to tape off the area, he was a known entity, a young man walking a precarious line. He was recognized as an associate of the Comancheros, an outlaw motorcycle club, though he was not a fully patched member. He existed in the orbit of that dangerous world, without holding official rank. Yet, to the wider public, his name carried a different weight. He was the younger brother of world boxing champion Chernica Sugar Neeks Johnson. While his sister fought her battles in the ring, Levi's struggles were on the streets. In the weeks leading up to this fatal event, his life seemed to be spiraling. Although serious charges against him had recently been dropped, he had pleaded guilty to a drug offense just days prior. To outsiders, these were warning signs, minor tremors, preceding a catastrophic quake that would leave a family grieving and a city demanding answers. The silence that followed the ambush was short-lived, quickly replaced by the roar of sirens and the precise, clinical movement of major crime investigators. The Good Life Health Club car park, usually a hub of suburban activity, was frozen in time, cordoned off by miles of police tape. Detectives, forensic specialists, and cess crews saturated Pine Mountain Road, combing through shrubbery and waste bins, searching for anything that could explain the ferocity of the afternoon's events. Flowers began to appear at the edge of the scene, a somber contrast to the marker cones dotting the pavement where the young man had lost his life. But while the community mourned, law enforcement was already shifting gears from response to pursuit. Task Force Maxima, the state's elite unit dedicated to disrupting organized crime groups, was immediately activated. The brazen nature of the attack, committed in broad daylight without masks, suggested a dangerous level of confidence, or perhaps recklessness. Investigators had a significant advantage: clear CCTV footage and witness accounts that allowed them to identify the 4 men seen fleeing the scene. The clock was ticking, and the dragnet was cast wide. Just 3 hours after the tragedy, the first breakthrough arrived. At approximately 4:00 p.m., the Queensland Police Dog Squad tracked a scent to a patch of dense bushland, only a few hundred meters from where the attack took place. There, sitting calmly in a park, they found 34-year-old Stuart Galloway. Shirtless, and seemingly resigned to his fate, Galloway offered no resistance, as officers took him into custody. Interestingly, his initial charges were not immediately for the fatal act itself, but for a suite of serious weapons offenses linked to evidence uncovered at a nearby residence, including possession of a revolver and explosives. It was the first domino to fall. 2 days later, on the morning of September 14th, tactical teams descended on a home in Birkdale, arresting 34-year-old Luke Thomas Moore. Unlike Galloway's quiet capture, Moore was swiftly charged in connection with Levi's passing, alongside drug and weapon offenses. With half the alleged team in custody, a disturbing picture of the motivation began to emerge. Police linked the suspects to a shadowy, lesser-known entity, calling themselves the 13 Kings. Based in the Kapalaba area, this group was not a major player on the national stage, but was suspected of trying to carve out territory in a violent bid for recognition. Theories circulated that the 13 Kings operated as a feeder group, a training ground for aspiring criminals hoping to earn their patch in Talan Europerex Kanapolarini, notorious motorcycle clubs. The working theory was chilling. One of the accused may have believed that carrying out this high-profile attack on a Comanchuo associate would be their ticket into the Tetamatata, upper echelons of the underworld. However, insiders were quick to correct the narrative. While the public feared this was the opening salvo in a gang war between the Comancheros and their rivals, the Mongols, intelligence suggested otherwise. Senior figures within the motorcycle club scene indicated that relations between the major groups were actually stable, particularly within the prison system. This was not a clash of titans. It appeared to be a personal dispute or a specific, sanctioned hit, carried out by men desperate to prove their worth. The violence was transactional, a stepping stone for status. But while Galloway and Moore were behind bars, two men remained in the wind, and authorities warned that the danger to the public was far from over. With two suspects secured, the spotlight turned to the remaining fugitives, 24-year-old Kyle Martin and 35-year-old Thomas Myler. The investigation had rapidly evolved from a reactive scramble into a sophisticated, high-stakes manhunt. Authorities issued stark warnings to the public, classifying the pair as significant risks to community safety. The message was unequivocal. These men were desperate, likely armed, and anyone caught aiding their evasion would face the full weight of the law. The streets of southeast Queensland were now the grid for a digital and physical dragnet, with detectives anticipating that the pressure would force the men to make a mistake. That mistake almost came in the form of a disguise. On September 15th, police raided a property in Ransom, searching for any trace of the duo. While the men were gone, they left behind a telling clue. Investigators discovered remnants of a hasty transformation hair clipping scattered on the floor. Myler, known for his distinct longer hairstyle, had likely sheared his locks in an attempt to blend into the crowd. It was a classic fugitive move, signaling that they were not planning to surrender. They were planning to vanish. But while Myler could change his appearance, he could not outrun the intelligence network closing in around him. The decisive breakthrough arrived on the evening of September 16th, triggered by a critical tip from a vigilant member of the public. This information directed police to a residence in Wellington Point, a quiet suburb on the water's edge. The operation that followed was a masterclass in modern surveillance. Earlier that day, the white Nissan patrolled the vehicle used as the battering ram in. The initial ambush had been discovered abandoned in Kapalaba. Now, all eyes were on a second vehicle, a Mazda, departing the Wellington Point address. High above, the Pole Air helicopter tracked the car's movements in real time using thermal imaging, observing unknowingly as the occupants drove to a secluded property in Chandler. What the aerial camera captured was damning. Police alleged that Myler and a female companion traveled to this location under the cover of darkness, not to hide themselves, but to bury evidence. It is believed they disposed of multiple firearms in the earth before returning to the safety of the house in Wellington Point. They were unaware that their every turn was being watched from the sky. Once the vehicle returned to the driveway on Skinner Avenue, the trap was sprung. Tactical teams, who had been shadowing the operation on the ground, surrounded the home. The element of surprise was absolute. Realizing there was no exit, Myler and the woman surrendered without incident. The search of the Chandler property subsequently recovered the buried items, adding serious weapon charges to Myler's already heavy docket. However, the arrest revealed a critical shift in the group's dynamic. Myler and Martin, previously moving in lockstep, had fractured. Whether due to the intense pressure of the manhunt, or a breakdown in trust, the two men had parted ways. Myler was now in custody, but Kyle Martin, the final piece of the puzzle, was out there alone, isolated and running out of time. The net was tightening, but the final thread remained loose. Kyle Martin, the youngest of the four alleged perpetrators, was the last man standing. For days, he had managed to evade the sweeping raids and surveillance that had ensnared his accomplices. But isolation is a fugitive's worst enemy. Without the support network of his co-accused, Martin had retreated to the regional town of Warwick, approximately 150 kilometers southwest of Brisbane. It was a strategic distance far enough to perhaps feel safe, but not far enough to escape the reach of Task Force Maxima. Detectives had shifted their focus from the man himself to his potential lifelines. They zeroed in on a vehicle linked to a woman believed to be Martin's partner. On the evening of September 17th, surveillance teams observed the car at a property on Albion Street. The operation required patience. Rushing in could risk a hostage situation or a desperate flight. The break in the standoff came from a mundane human necessity: hunger. Watchers observed the woman leaving the building to visit a local takeaway shop. It was a routine act, but her purchase was the confirmation police needed. She bought dinner for two, paying in cash. It was a simple, fatal error in tradecraft. Police were now certain Martin was inside. At 9:30 p.m., the Special Emergency Response Team (SERT) flooded the perimeter. With the property surrounded and no avenues for escape, the 24-year-old's run came to an anticlimactic end. He surrendered without incident, bringing the 5-day manhunt to a close. The woman was detained but later released without charge, having cooperated with inquiries. Martin, however, was transported back to Brisbane to face the same grave charges as his former allies. Police alleged that he had a personal feud with Levi and would later argue in court that Martin was the one who delivered the final fatal blows during the chaotic scuffle at the intersection. Justice, however, moves far slower than a police pursuit. More than 2 years after the tragedy, the legal process is still grinding forward. In November 2023, the reality of that day was replayed in a Brisbane courtroom during a bail hearing for Thomas Myler. The court was shown the harrowing CCTV footage of the ambush, visual proof of the ferocious nature of the attack. Prosecutors argued that Myler, armed and aggressive, had acted with a common purpose alongside Martin, making him equally culpable for the tragic outcome. Despite offers of a massive $500,000 surety and strict house arrest, the judge denied bail, citing the unacceptable risk Myler posed to the community. For the family of Levi Johnson, these court dates are painful reminders of a wound that has yet to heal. They have remained largely silent, shielding their grief from the media glare, but those close to them speak of a frustration with the slow pace of the legal system. The 4 men accused of executing a public, daylight attack remain behind bars, awaiting trial. The story of Levi Johnson serves as a grim testament to the volatile intersection of youth, ego, and organized crime. It is a reminder that in the underworld, alliances are fragile, and the consequences of a single violent afternoon can ripple through a community for years to come.